Well, good evening and welcome. Thank you for attending today's candidate forum featuring Democratic primary candidates running for Illinois Legislative District 51. My name is Kathy Cortez, and I'm the local chairperson for candidate forums for the League of Women Voters of the Palatine area. And we serve Bartlett, Barrington communities, Hoffman Estates, Palatine, Rolling Meadows, Schaumburg, and other surrounding communities in Cook and Lake counties. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that neither supports, opposes, nor recommends candidates for office. Our purpose for holding forums is solely to enable members of the community to become better informed about candidates running for office and their views on the issues. We'd like to extend our sincere thanks to the Palatine Library, whose technology capabilities have made today's forum possible, and the library's Ali Indovina and Rolando Medrando for being our co-host today, even though they'll be operating the webinar in the background. To ensure that today's questions for the forum represented a balance of content and viewpoints, we solicited issues and topics from the community and candidates in advance. A bipartisan group from the League of Women Voters of the Palatine area vetted questions and created a pool of questions for the moderator to select from. As you're already aware, you were asked to identify issues you wanted to hear about when you registered for the forum. And questions from that pool were prioritized based on those responses for today's event. As a result, we will not be using chat or raised hands features today, and audience members will do it. And now I'm pleased to introduce my moderator for today's forum, Eva Porter. Eva is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, which is an organization of college-educated women committed to the constructive development of its members and to public service with a primary focus on the Black community. The Deltas are a nonpartisan 501c7 organization. The remotes do not endorse candidates. Eva was trained as a forum moderator by the League of Women Voters, and I'd like to thank Eva and the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority for its partnership in helping to deliver this forum for all of you today. So without further ado, Eva.
Good evening. Thank you for that introduction. It is my pleasure to be with you this evening to moderate this candidates forum. As a resident of Hanover Park, I am eligible to vote I am not eligible to vote in this election. So I have been asked to serve as an impartial facilitator for this election. So I have been asked to serve as an impartial facilitator, again, for this discussion as a volunteer in cooperation with the League of Women Voters, and I am so my pleasure to do so. Let me take a few minutes to explain the format and the rules for the forum. As all of the candidates were contacted email, and phone, and have agreed to abide by the ground rules provided by the League of Women Voters. They are as follows. Candidates have drawn numbers to determine speaking order. The moderator will rotate this order during the forum for questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statement. Next, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions. The moderator will repeat the questions if necessary. If needed, a rebuttal may be requested. Each candidate may use a maximum of 2 rebuttals. At the end of each, we will have a 2-minute closing statement. Explain timing process and introduce the timer, Sullivan. Candidates will be given 30 seconds your thoughts before you see the stop card. Time limits will be enforced out of respect for all candidates. Questions have been solicited from the audience members at the time of registration and by the local civic organization. Each question will be answered by both and all candidates. Questions have been reviewed for bias, clarity, and to avoid duplication. Have been asked not to interrupt one another. Today's forum will be taped for League of Women Voters A video of this forum early next week on the voters of the Palatine area the public library website, and the LW of Illinois Voters Guide, which can be the League of Women Voters WV-IL website. The candidates have agreed to this. No campaign signs, buttons, or partisan materials may be visible on screen. No voice, image, or other duplication of the forum may be used by a candidate's representative or campaign in any campaign advertising. The League of Women Voters claims copyright ownership of all recording and transcripts produced for this event and reserve the right to publicize this forum. To view this forum, please go to the League website at www.lwvpalatinearea.org. I'll repeat that, www.leagueofwomenvoters.lwvpalatinearea.org. Today, we will hear from the candidates hoping to represent the Democratic Party in the general election for Illinois Legislation District 51. We have two candidates in for this spot on the ballot. In alphabetical order with us today and on the ballots are Chelsea, Laliberte-Barnes and Nabeela Syed. I would read these candidates' bios for you. Chelsea, born and raised in Lake County, Chelsea and her parents started the Live for Lily, a grassroots nonprofit that provides peer support, education, harm education outreach, and advocacy in Lake County after her brother, Alex Laliberte, died from an accidental drug overdose in 2008. Through her leadership, Live for Lehi, now serves also the owner of the CLB Strategies, a nonprofit and leadership consulting firm. Her entrepreneurial mind stems from a long line of small businesses owners, including her father and grandfather. Chelsea lives in Palatine with her husband, Matt, their son, Luke, and their dog, Sam. For more information, visit Chelsea's for Illinois website. Nabeela Syed, born and raised in Palatine. Nabeela graduated from the University of California, Berkeley, with a degree in political science and business administration, organization, assisting local businesses and nonprofits. Professionally, Nabeela has worked with a variety of progressive organizations and currently works for non-profit engagement. Nabeela has serving as a mentor, debate coach, and Society of Northwest Interfaith Muslim women to lead. For more information, please visit the Nabeela Syed site. I want to thank you for your participation. We will begin with the 2-minute opening statements. By number draw, Nabeela will go first. Thank you. Now you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Nabeela Syed. I was born and raised in Palatine. I attended the public schools here. This place is my home, and I believe my home needs representation that reflects the inclusivity of our community. You know, Illinois is a great state. There is no doubt about that. Taking historic action on climate change and preventing gun violence with innovative programs and real substantial anti-violence funding. But more can be done, and I believe I can contribute to those conversations. I worked Emily's List to elect pro-choice Democratic women all across the nation in 2019, when states like Alabama and Texas were passing some of the most restrictive laws on abortion. I worked with organizations to advance the PRO Act, which would protect people's rights to collectively bargain, benefiting working families across our country. It's why I'm incredibly proud to have the Illinois AFL-CIO endorse our campaign. I manage school board races for our local high school district to elect candidates who believe in public health, expanding mental health initiatives, and putting students and teachers first. I'm honored to have the support of several school board members in both of the local teachers unions that overlap with this district. Now I coach students at Friend High School. I work for a nonprofit called Civic Nation, working day in and day out to fight voter suppression and advance gender equity. I have a known track record of advancing progressive causes both nationally and locally because I truly believe in the values of the Democratic Party. I'm rooted in this community and invested in our growth. And now I'm running for the opportunity to serve our community and advance these causes in the state legislature. I want to thank the League of Women Voters. As someone who works in voting rights, as someone who works to increase voter education, as someone who worked on the local school board races, I know how impactful these candidate forums are. So I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. We will now have the opening statement from Chelsea.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Palatine Area Library for hosting this event tonight. I'm Chelsea Laliberte-Barnes, and I have been proud to serve our community as a mental health provider, organizer, business owner, and nonprofit leader for the past 13 years. I'm also a mom to my 3-year-old son, Luke, who is the love of my life, and I worked full-time without childcare through the pandemic, like many of you, wondering every single day if everything my husband and I built was about to fall apart. And I feel so fortunate to call Palatine my home, right around the corner from where I grew up in Killdeer and Lake Zurich. I spent much of my childhood hanging out at the American Legion Hall with my step-grandmother, Helen, Jay's Camp in Long Grove, and at church and synagogue. My roots cross all corners of this district. I'm a licensed social worker certified in trauma at Cherry Hill Counseling in Lake Zurich. I have spent the past year coming alongside teens and families in crisis, and I own CLB Strategies, which is a nonprofit consulting firm supporting groups nationwide. As Eva mentioned, I lost my brother Alex to an overdose in 2008, and the hopelessness and devastation that I felt, I would not wish upon anyone. It was a cornerstone that led to my family starting the local grassroots nonprofit Live for Lali to spread awareness and save lives from overdose. And over the past 12 years, we've been a beacon of hope for thousands of people who have been silenced. I have advised local, state, and federal governments on improving safety across communities. I've helped write and pass more than 20 state and federal laws. I know how to build bipartisan coalitions that make an impact, like the Lake County Opioid Initiative. And I know how to listen and bring people together to address challenging problems. I am running for you and a brighter future for our community. I'm going to fight for you, and I'm here for you as I've always been. My campaign has been endorsed by leaders across many levels of government, including U.S. Congressman Brad Schneider, Illinois Secretary of State Jesse White, Lake County Treasurer Holly Kim, Lake County Board Chair Sandy Hart, and State Senator Melinda Bush, and today I announced U.S. Senator Dick Durbin. I'm really excited to be here and share my perspectives with all of you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Nabeela Syed and Chelsea Laliberte-Barnes. We'll go to Chelsea. What are your key priorities, and how will you focus on those priorities as the people? How will those issues unfold in the district? I will repeat. What are your key priorities, and how will you focus on those issues that affect people in the district?
So my priorities reflect your needs and our shared values. I've knocked on more than 8,500 doors since announcing my candidacy in August. I've attended many events. I've studied up. I've talked to. I've had coffee conversations, and I'm really going to be focusing on those kitchen table issues that are keeping you up at night, including building a more robust economy and reducing the property tax burden, preserving our environment, improving access to quality healthcare that meets people where they are at, including mental health, care for seniors, women's reproductive health care, quality education, and increased social emotional support for students and their teachers and school staff. And by the way, happy Teachers Appreciation Week to all the teachers out there. Bipartisan consensus building is very important to me, and building safer communities and preventing violence in all forms. As a social worker, obviously one of my key components of my life is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am going to be promoting that as best as I can in this role. I will always advocate to love who you love and be who you are. I'm always going to listen to you, regardless of where we stand politically or ideologically. I bring authenticity, compassion, and ethics to a political system that needs it.
Nabeela?
Just a quick question. I believe were the rules changed to be 2 minutes per responses?
2 minutes, that's correct. If I said 1 minute, I stand to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabeela. Yeah, I thought that too. Thanks. Is it okay if I go on?
She did time you.
Chelsea, please take your extra minute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I came to these conclusions not just because of, the last 10 months of knocking on doors and really getting to know the community. I've been studying it for 13 years. I graduated from Stevenson. I got my bachelor's from Roosevelt in integrated marketing communications. I've got my master's in social work from Case Western. And as a social worker, I'm required to take annual training on ethics and diversity and equity and inclusion and how to empathetically support the most vulnerable among us. And starting at age 23, I got to crack every system that touches our lives. I learned very quickly that humans just want to feel good or feel better and live lives with dignity. I mean, I've grown Live for Lolly into a $1 million annual operation, serving thousands across Chicago suburbs. And I started the Lake County Opioid Initiative with former Lake County leadership during a time when no one wanted to touch mental health or addiction due to such pervasive stigma. And now we're saving lives every day. The issue we're focusing on come 100% from you and what you have told me that you want your state representatives to advocate for on your behalf.
Thank you, Chelsea. I apologize, my computer is trying to update. Nabeela, the question for you is the same. I will repeat. What are your key priorities and how will you focus on those issues that affect people in the district?
Thank you so much. I am incredibly proud that our campaign has knocked on over 10,000 doors. We've been learning about what matters most to people in this district. And one conversation that I had early on with a voter in this district, not too far from where I live, comes to mind. I knocked on his door back in November, and upon asking her, what issue areas are keeping up at night, what concerns her the most, she broke down in the matter of 3 seconds, crying about how scared she is to send her kids to school. And for me, it shook me a bit because it's been so normalized. I grew up in this generation that is used to doing active shooting drills. This is normal for us. But this is a very, very real concern that parents in our district are feeling. And I've been attending Moms Demand Action meetings every single month. I've been learning from students in our local March for Our Lives groups. And it is clear that Illinois, we've been making significant progress in terms of banning ghost guns, but there is much more that we need to be doing. We need to have restrictions on assault weapons because they frankly do not belong in our community. We need to stop the flow of illegal weapons coming in from neighboring states. So addressing gun violence has to be one of my top priorities. And additionally, I want to continue that. Now, Chris Buss, the Republican incumbent in the seat, he voted against extending ballot drop boxes and curbside voting, things that would help people with disabilities in our communities. We need to ensure that people with disabilities have better access to services, to resources, to PACE buses in the suburbs. LGBTQ people need to be supported with legislation that makes our communities feel safer for them. Across the board, I want to advocate for our communities, our schools to be safer, to welcome diversity, and to care for every single one of our neighbors.
Thank you. The next question will go to Nabeela under Environment and Climate Change. The question is, what are your thoughts on the causes and impact of climate change, and what action, if any, would you take to support your position?
Thank you so much. In our lifetime, the conversation on climate change has shifted drastically. And for years, the science has been showing us time and time again that greenhouse gas emissions are heating up our planet. And I'm so grateful to live in Illinois, a state legislature that just passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which invests $80 million every year into developing a renewable energy workforce. It addresses both the economic and the environmental concerns we're facing, but it also recognizes the need for immediate action to address climate change and also the disproportionate impact climate change has on communities of color. And my Republican opponent once again voted no for this, despite it passing with a bipartisan supermajority. Legislators like Boss are the reason why climate change has worsened. And there's so much more we can do. Like other states, we could also enact a coal severance tax, which would tax the severance and the preparation of coal. And this, if we replicate things that Texas and Alabama have done, this could generate $100 million for us annually. And that money could be put towards helping communities transition away from coal. And an environmental concern that I believe is extremely close to home in this district that I want to work on is addressing the transportation of highly toxic materials in our community. I mean, like right next to Lake Zurich High School, there's a freight train carrying hazardous materials. And our communities have a right to know more about the emergency response plans and what materials are being passed through our backyards. For the sake of the safety of our students, of young people, of everyone, we need to engage not only people who are of addressing these environmental concerns, stakeholders who can do something about it. We need to be talking to the chemical and the railroad industry to figure out how we can alleviate these problems. So I look forward to working to take urgent action on these matters because, as it has been made clear time and time again, we don't have any time to waste on this issue.
Thank you. Chelsea, I will repeat the question. What are your thoughts on the causes and impact of climate change? And what actions, if any, would you take to support your position?
This is one of those issues that's keeping me up at night, that's for sure. I look at my little 3-year-old son's beautiful face in the morning and I think to myself, what are we leaving him? What are we leaving your children, your grandchildren? And I am astounded to read data about how our planet is warming at such alarming rates due to greenhouse gas emissions, but I'm hopeful that we can turn it around with locally focused actions driven by the new booming eco-friendly markets. Instead of patchworking our way through this, I believe we must take a bipartisan approach. And in talking to climate scientists and local advocates, there are some sustainable, comprehensive solutions that a package could include. One is educating the public about personal environmental stewardship. We should be prioritizing carbon footprint calculators and suggestions, tangible suggestions on how each household can make a difference, like using LED bulbs. Providing tax breaks to residents who buy a hybrid or a fully electric vehicle, or eco-friendly home appliances, and of course to businesses as well that operate in accordance with eco-friendly standards. We should consider eliminating the distribution of plastic bags and single-use products, building on the CEJA, the Climate Equity and Jobs Act, absolutely. Investing in green energy. Our location and land mass here in Illinois alone energy markets that will decrease our dependency on coal and oil while increasing good paying jobs, and incentivizing the recycling of aluminum and gas bottles. Other states do this, 10 other states do this in Guam, I believe, and we should consider doing it here. And at the local level, I mean, we've got to take a look at, we've got a lot of great local organizations who need resources like Citizens for Conservation and the Ancient Oaks Foundation. We've got to start using native plants to help control and clean stormwater as it returns to our water. And we've got to ensure that our local governments are transitioning over to hybrid car fleets and eco-friendly village operations, which I'm happy to engage with the local government on that and make that happen. The truth is that half measures are not going to save our planet, and we really don't have a moment to lose.
Thank you. The next question, we will start with you, Chelsea. The question is, what accommodations, if any, would you make to businesses and or individuals in our state to help them transition?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. To transition to what?
What accommodations, if any, would you make to businesses and or individuals in our state to help them transition?
Transition to what?
This is under environmental and climate change.
Oh, okay. So we're still talking about environmental and climate change. Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of this honestly comes from consensus building. I think it comes from actually sitting down, working together with legislators, with climate advocates, with people in our communities, with the energy companies, with the railroads, with the chemical plants, with the water systems, and making sure that we are actually doing those having those bipartisan conversations, having those real conversations about the solutions that are in front of us. I mean, I think when we bring people together to actually work on these issues, we can accomplish a lot. And I think we've seen this time and time again with locally focused organizations and locally focused groups. I'm an organizer. This is what I do. And so I think that we have to listen to them. We have to bring them to the table, businesses and homeowners. We have to understand what barriers exist for them to be able to actually create some of these transitions. There's a lot of licensing and regulatory pieces that we're not considering when we're just saying, do this now. We want to make sure that we can really build a sustainable and logical and an open-ended response to what we're actually suggesting. So, I mean, I think, again, it's got to come from organizing. It's got to come from having tough conversations. It's got to come from digging in and really doing the hard work. And that's what I do. That's what my track record has indicated I've always done. And I will do that here with climate change and the environment.
Thank you. Nabeela, you have the same question. I will repeat it, please. What accommodations, if any, would you make to businesses and individuals in our state to help them transition? And this is still under environment and climate change.
Thank you so much. I would like to start off by acknowledging how important this question is, because I do believe that the burden of addressing the urgency of climate change needs to fall on these businesses that are contributing to it a lot. Transitioning, I am a big advocate of transitioning away from single-use plastics. I attend the Plastic Sierra Club meetings. I'm a huge fan, but it does come from a position of privilege because not everyone can afford to be environmentally conscious. Not everyone can afford to transition to solar panels. So as our state legislature, we need to make sure that we're making it more affordable, but also putting pressure on businesses and encouraging them to be far more environmentally conscious. And something I'd like to point out that Illinois recently did was the Reimagining Electric Vehicles in Illinois Act, which actually provides billions in tax incentives to entice electric vehicle manufacturers to come to Illinois and create jobs. And we're already seeing the benefits of this. Jeep and both Ford and Belvedere have started retrofitting their manufacturing plants to be able to transition to producing electric vehicles. So I'm excited about this, and I believe more tax incentives can be provided to businesses to better transition. I mentioned the coal severance tax that could be enacted and how that can help communities transition away from using coal. We actually also had new fuel economy standards that were put in place in April 1st of this past year. So the average fleet of cars needs to be 49 miles per gallon by 2026. So seeing this, there's obviously going to be a bigger demand for electric vehicles. So as businesses are making this transition, it's on us to encourage other manufacturers to build chargers that better accommodate for these changes. Because once again, I believe that these businesses play a critical role in helping us address some of our environmental concerns. And it's imperative that we make it as easy as possible for them to do so.
Thank you. The next question will go to you, Nabeela. It is under crime, gun rights, control, and climate justice, criminal justice. What 2 or 3 measures would you support or have you supported in the past that would help Illinois make progress towards reducing growth in our community? Why do you believe those measures would work?
Thank you so much for that question. I'm grateful that in this district, we haven't had many high-profile policing issues. I'm grateful that A vast majority of people in this district have a very great relationship with our local law enforcement. They're well funded and they're well trained. But I believe when we're talking about this kind of question, we need to acknowledge that we're not too far away from communities where there have been issues with proper policing. And I like to rely on data, and what the data tells us is that Black and Brown communities across the state are pulled over, go to jail, and are in the criminal court system at disproportionate rates. When we see a Black man, Laquan McDonald, get shot 16 times in the street, there is an issue in some of our communities that needs to be addressed. And the reason we have low crime rates in our community is because we have some of the better trained police departments in our state, but there's always room for improvement. In fact, our state just passed several public safety bills that I believe will help address some of these issues. Some of these reforms include de-escalation training to help officers better serve their communities, mental health screenings for law enforcement, banning the purchase and the use of military equipment, which I frankly believe we don't need in our communities. And I believe we're working towards building community trust in law enforcement through this transparency. Something that I mentioned that we could definitely start doing head on to address this issue with crime, specifically using guns, is restricting assault weapons on our streets, making sure that we're continuing to implement the ban of ghost guns, making sure that every gun that's on our streets has a serial number associated with it, and stopping the illegal flow of weapons coming in from neighboring states, because this is a real concern when it comes to crime. And I think in addition to building better trust with our law enforcement to make sure that we have good relationships with them across the state, making sure they're well trained and well funded, we also need to make sure that we have fewer guns that are harming our community members.
Thank you.
Is it my turn?
Yes, Chelsea. I will repeat the question.
Okay.
Under crime, gun rights, control, and criminal justice, what 2 or 3 measures would you support or have you supported in the past that would help Illinois make progress towards reducing growing violence in our communities? Why do you believe those measures would work?
As someone who has helped write criminal justice reform legislation in Illinois, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I hope I could keep it to 3, but I'm incredibly concerned about the uptick in violent crime in Chicago and the suburbs, and we have to act quickly. We also need to recognize that crime does not happen in a vacuum. There is a trove of root causes that sociologists note are the keys to reversing the trends. Some examples include adverse childhood experiences and trauma, psychological and mental health issues, poverty, antiquated policies. And because of these, I support justice reform at the safety law. It really does go a long way to eliminate inequities in our criminal justice system. For example, eliminating cash bail because it's harmful to families and communities. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars to encourage them to community care. And we have to expand actual community-based services like mental health care, job training and placement, housing, food access, transportation, immigration services. And so I really support the criminal justice overhaul package. I mean, the victims' rights group support it as well. And so we do have to continue working in this way and making sure that we are implementing therapeutic interventions for people who are caught up in it. One of the things that I also think is important to note is that police and the broader criminal legal system have to be at the table when designing policy. And I speak to local police chiefs and have worked with prosecutors for years. In fact, Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhardt and Sheriff John Eidelberg are endorsing my campaign. I've witnessed how compassionate community policing and innovative risk reduction programming actually work. And Springfield can play a really significant role in this by partnering with advocates and victims' rights groups and the system to draft a package that provides prevention and intervention programs that will help attack the issue at the root and rebuild relationships between police and the public. Like, we can ensure children are safer through legislation that increases consequences for rape, but how will we encourage victims to come forward when they don't have faith that the system will believe them? So police departments should train the community and execute public safety awareness strategies and campaigns. Trauma specialists should provide training for police on interacting with communities. I like the Lake Coast model, which sends clinicians.
Thank you, Chelsea. Your time is up.
Okay.
The next question goes to you and is very similar. The question is, Illinois passed comprehensive criminal justice legislation last year, including cash bail, home monitoring, and just to name a few. What changes, if any, would you like to see made to this legislation and why?
I'm sorry, does that go to me first?
Yes, yes.
Not following it. So like I said, I really support the Safety Act. As I said, I was part of the conversations that led to the building and implementation of it. But as I said, when we are not including everybody at the table, you're going to get a lot of pushback. And one of the groups that was really left out in this decision-making and claims that there were a lot of 11th hour decision-making happening were our local police, who didn't really have a say in a lot of the aspects of the legislation. So I think it's encouraging that the legislators are now going back and trying to rework some of those pieces so that they are more appropriate to, encouraging community members, law enforcement, and social services and criminal legal services to actually build a new bill. But what I hope that they'll do is they'll take a look at those really, really successful community-based models, like the Lake Sheriff's Coast model, which sends clinicians to crime scenes and follow-up calls alongside police. Police can divert attention towards patrolling neighborhoods and common areas to respond to intruders, but we have to be able to give them the resources to do that, because that's not often how policing works. So we can do a lot. And I also think that we should be adding more into the Safety Act and the criminal justice legislation about gun safety. I mean, I believe in the constitutional right to own a firearm, but I do not think any weapon should be accessible to children and individuals with mental health issues. So there are some things that we can touch up from other bills that I think are really critical. One of the things I'm concerned about is like a checks and balances system. Many of our most pressing problems share the same solutions. For example, we can model something after the prescription drug monitoring program, which encourages physicians to check a registry to see if their patients are engaging in a pattern of prescription drug misuse. Gun sellers should be able to check a database that lets them know whether the person they are about to sell a gun to has a criminal record or a history of violence. So I support cap laws, adding that into the bill, expanding safe storage laws, but making sure that we take the step beyond awareness and really go to some legitimate consequences.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nabeela, the question goes to you. Illinois passed comprehensive criminal justice legislation last year, including cash bail, home monitoring, just to name a few. What changes, if any, would you like to see made to this legislation and why?
Yeah, so, the bills that were passed range from, once again, banning the sale of firearms that aren't registered, ghost guns that could be assembled by users in their homes. It, had efforts to crack down on new technologies being used by burglars, creating, organized retail theft crime offenses to curb the widespread looting that we've been seeing in Chicago and some of the suburbs. And there are lots of common sense solutions, again, that are being supported by law enforcement agencies to root out this increase in crime directly correlated with the pandemic. And something important to note is that the Safety Act invests $100 million into the state police. This is the single largest increased appropriation that we've given to the state police. And I think that it's critical that we make sure that our police officers are well trained to deal with the issues that are occurring in their individual communities. Legislation in Springfield will solve every single problem our state encounters. I don't think it'll be, patching all the work that we need to be doing to address crime. But I also believe that, when people point to one piece of legislation and demonize it as the root of all our crime problems, as some people have been doing, that's disingenuous at best. This bill does a lot to address crime. But once again, something that I keep going back to is this concern. The city of Chicago is increasingly concerned about gun violence. There needs to be provided within this act. we need to be making sure that the roots, the causes of this violence are being addressed, and the roots go beyond, and the way that the violence is being carried out is being addressed. And like people in the suburbs say, the biggest thing.
Thank you, Nabeela. The next question goes to you, Nabeela. Under economic inflation, economic growth, jobs, business environment. The question, what do you consider to be the 2 or 3 most important things the state can do to attract businesses and jobs to Illinois? And what changes to programs, regulations, or laws would you sponsor to make those things happen?
Thank you. Thanks to the incredible leadership in our state, Illinois' financial situation is, I would say, almost unrecognizable from just 4 years ago. Our comptroller, Susana Mendoza, paid back over $16.7 billion in bill backlogs, cleaning up the mess that former Governor Bruce Browner left our state in. And under her leadership, we received our first 3 credit rating upgrades, the first in over 20 years. That's why I'm especially proud to have Comptroller Susana Mendoza endorsing our campaign, because she believes that I will expand fiscal accountability in the state. In this recently passed budget, when we're talking about the economy, the state is giving more than $1.8 billion in tax and inflation relief. And this comes in the form of tax freezes on groceries and gas, a 10-day sales tax holiday on back-to-school items in August, and the expansion of the earned income tax credit. This is a step in the right direction. I want to continue expanding on these things. But in order to improve our economy, it's also imperative that we attract businesses to our state. And we have a great story to tell here in Illinois. Among the things I mentioned, we have the 5th best economy in the country. And it's been difficult for businesses to return to pre-pandemic production levels. We've been seeing supply chain shortages across the country globally. And our state should be taking advantage of that and attracting those businesses to both address the supply chain shortages and create jobs here. It's similar to what we've been doing in the microchip industry. There's been a huge shortage of microchips, and recently the state legislature created various tax incentives for manufacturers of microchips and its components to produce here in Illinois. I also think it's imperative that as we create these new jobs, we need to boost job training here locally. We're lucky to have 2 of the best community colleges right here in our backyards, the College of Lake County and Harper College. And at the state level, we need to ensure that there's adequate funding and resources being given to help cultivate our community and give them job training to better set them up for these job opportunities that we hope to create in the future.
Thank you, Nabeela. Chelsea, I will repeat the question for you. What do you consider to be 2 or 3 most important things the state can do to attract businesses and jobs to Illinois? And what changes to programs, regulations, or laws would you sponsor to make those things happen?
Well, I'm a small business owner, as I said, and I pay property taxes. And I get why people are angry and leaving the state. But from what I've learned, Illinois does not have a spending problem. We have a tax policy and pension policy problem. And we must consider new models that decrease property tax costs, increase good paying jobs, and ensure pension tiers are fair and sustainable for public employees. The best economic policies, from what I've learned, promotes a growing middle class and equitable distribution of resources. And I'm really excited that Illinois can finally pay off its debts and has increased its credit rating and bond rating. We have to stay on course and continue paying off these debts. Illinois has 38 Fortune 500 companies headquartered here, and we have one of the most educated workforces in the country. And we lead the nation in the value of goods that travel through the state. So we need to find revenue sources that don't require our communities to dip further into their already overburdened pockets. And one of the best ways to do that is to improve the way we retain and attract businesses in the state. So we've got to build on these strengths to expand our tax base, put our highly educated workforce to work by growing our high-tech manufacturing and green energy fields. In order to bring new businesses here, we have to streamline our licensing process and reduce unnecessary regulatory burdens. And we must ensure that the ultra wealthy and major corporations are paying their fair share. Why is it that nurses and service workers pay more in taxes than the CEO of Walgreens? It is illogical. And sometimes external factors require us to think and act more quickly than usual. We're all experiencing the impacts of inflation right now. Like I literally paid $13 for a balloon on my son's birthday, and it lasted for 2 weeks and was probably the best balloon ever invented, but $13 for the number 3. And with gas prices at record highs and businesses needing to offset supply chain costs, we have to provide residents with a much needed break. And the new fiscal bill really does a great job in doing that. We've got to work to bring in more good paying union supported jobs to the state and avoid future crises.
Thank you, Chelsea. The next question goes to you, Chelsea. Under social justice, politics, and programs, what is the state's role in funding and promoting workplace and job skills in high schools and junior college? What strategies would you recommend?
Sure. So first of all, social justice work is what I do. It's who I am. It's probably one of the reasons why the National Association of Social Workers Illinois chapter is endorsing me. And, you know, as a social worker, my mission is to stand up for the most marginalized and help people lead self-directed lives. So like I said, it's what I do. I'm a social worker who works at all levels of impact, on the micro level with individuals and families, on the metro level with organizations and coalitions, and at the macro level with policymakers to literally write and pass laws. And, you know, a law that I think is really innovative, the Housing Omnibus Bill, which was promoted by AHAND, which is an association of homeless advocates in the area that I'm a part of. It's really robust in providing necessary resources to develop affordable housing while creating new labor union jobs and apprenticeship programs. There are opportunities to continue on educating folks on various trades everywhere we look. I think public schools have to do a better job of increasing their relationships with for certified technical education and training programs. I'd like to see there be more of a gateway to attract for people who want to become social workers, counselors, and psychologists. I mean, this is an area that needs huge growth, a huge marketplace that if we don't grow it, we are not going to be able to serve people who most need the help. 25% of Medicaid patients right now, only 25% can get a therapist. So it goes to show you that we have a lot of industries that we can actually start weeding people into from the public education level, but they have to be able to know that it's there. They have to be able to see it. And we have to be able to actually do a better job of pinpointing what is it that our students actually want to do instead of what is it that society wants them to do. I think we get caught up in that a lot. Instead of letting people's personalities and interests really thrive, we could do a much better job of actually finding ways to lead them towards jobs and careers that make sense for them. And so there are a lot of innovative solutions to being able to develop jobs. And I'm really willing to get to work and do it and get my hands dirty.
Thank you. Nabeela, the question for you is the same. What is the state's role in funding and promoting workplace and job skills in high school and junior college? What strategies would you recommend?
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the work I did with the local school board races here in District 211, which covers both Palatine and Inverness. One of the reasons I wanted to get involved is because there are very limited pathways to what is deemed a success after graduating. And it's extremely narrow the way sometimes some schools, some junior colleges view it. And I wanted to help support, elect leaders that understood that the pathway beyond high school does not look the same. It's not unilateral. And I wanted to elect leaders that would promise to cultivate young people to be able to pursue what would benefit them the most, what they wanted to do. And it's critical to analyze every single thing when we're talking about job training, when we're talking about being more equitable. Equity needs to be at the forefront of these conversations. Talking about how we're going to improve job training, improve access to opportunities in high schools, in junior college, it's critical to address, are we doing enough work to be providing resources to students to pursue a number of jobs, not just attending college, but different opportunities, and providing them with the resources to actually seek those opportunities. And I think when we're talking about, at a grander scale, when we're looking at income inequality, it's because we tend to view things with a more narrow lens when we're talking to school boards. So I think it's critical that we work with all stakeholders. We work with school districts and school board members to make more resources available to expand job training opportunities. We work with colleges like Harper College and the College of Lake County to invest more in their job training programs that already exist. And we do more to target communities of color that are sometimes left out of these conversations to have a much more equitable approach to providing opportunities to everyone in our community.
Thank you. Nabeela, the next question is yours. What steps, if any, should the state take to encourage our communities to improve the supply of safe, affordable housing? I'll repeat that. What steps, if any, should the state take to encourage our communities to improve the supply of safe, affordable housing?
Yeah, so I know that even locally here, we have been doing a lot of work to ensure that people in our communities have access to affordable housing. There have been initiatives and proposals that have been made in both Lake Zurich and in Palatine to ensure that, or to hopefully get affordable housing within our communities. And I think it is very critical to speak specifically about the 51st District. People here tend to assume that our communities are extremely affluent and there is not a need for affordable housing, but there is certainly a need here. And that's been made very, very clear by public high schools in the district, the local community colleges who have been communicating this data to districts and in our local villages about this need. And that need only grows the closer and closer you get to the city. So I believe the state needs to play a very crucial role in providing more affordable housing options, and especially given the COVID-19 pandemic. That came as a shock to many families. Families that could afford housing at one point were no longer able to afford housing. And this income shock left some people without affordable housing. And it's critical to prepare for that in the future. In any case that we have some similar shocks to our economy, some similar shocks to people's income, they need to have affordable options located within their communities so that they could continue to benefit from the incredible public schools that are in this district. They could continue to benefit from the great communities that they grew up in without having to move away from, the 51st District in our home.
Thank you. Chelsea, you have the same question. What steps, if any, should the state take to encourage our communities to improve the supply of safe, affordable housing?
First of all, yeah, housing is dignity. Housing is harm reduction. Housing is love. When you don't have a place to live, how are you going to be motivated to get up and achieve some of the goals that you have? And that is a real problem. Running Live for Lolly for 13 years, many of the people that we engaged with were homeless. And we had to partner, and of course are happy to do so, with many housing agencies, but we only have a few. There's not a lot of them. We can't just rely on Shelter, Inc. and Journeys and pads for everything. There has to be more. And though often those are very temporary. So as I said, I've been involved with the Association for Homeless Advocates in the Northwest District for a few years. I'm a supportive of the housing omnibus package that would create affordable housing through a lot of funding coming from the federal government and create new labor union jobs at the same time. And if elected, I'm going to work to ensure that low-income housing is not viewed as a drain on the system, but as an essential aspect of community care. There are many housing coalitions across the state that are specifically focused on this issue right now, and many bills that are running through the General Assembly that we can attach to. We know that there are many evidence-based housing first models that actually provide not just the actual housing itself, but supportive services, food, teaching people even how to cook food and how to do basic life skills, being able to get people, back on their feet after they're re-entering from jail or prison, or if they're having a tough time. And yeah, recently there was a housing opportunity, an affordable housing development opportunity that was shot down by the village of Palatine, which I was devastated to hear about that I helped advocate for in a little way that I could. And we did a similar thing in Arlington Heights, and this is just going to keep going. But we have to really be taking a look at why we are shooting down good ideas that are cost effective, that save taxpayers dollars, that are safe, and actually create the opportunity for people to thrive and grow, bringing people from poverty into the middle class. Housing is equity, and we have to pursue this.
Thank you. Thank you. Chelsea, you have the next question.
We have reached the last question.
I'm looking at the time, it's 6:58. And so now we have would this be the last question or the closing question? I didn't hear you, Kathy.
Last question, yes.
That's what I was going to say. So the last question would be, under politics, partisan, bipartisan, on which of your priorities would you be willing to make compromise in order to find common ground and gain support for bipartisan legislation?
All of it. I mean, honestly, so I'm not a part of the political machine. I think that's a huge benefit when we're actually talking about getting things done. I spent 13 years working in a bipartisan manner to address real challenges locally. I mentioned the Lake County Opioid Initiative. Gosh, that was a terrifying project for me to launch because I had to put my democraticness to the side and be like a nonpartisan leader, which is hard to do. And at the time we started in 2012, the entire area, Cook County suburbs and Lake County, were Republican run. So I had to set up meetings at 23 years old with more conservative people and police chiefs who I thought were going to slam the door in my face at the mention of suggesting we do more for housing and food insecure folks and those struggling with mental health and drugs. And I was wrong. They cared too, and they wanted things to change. And as you can imagine, like think about standing over a body and watching teenagers die from an overdose or a suicide every week. It's very disempowering and traumatizing, and it should never happen. And Cook County has done some of the models here. We've actually expanded out to many communities around here. And they're actually, doing things like taking people from the street right into treatment. No handcuffs, no charges, no aggression. And I know that's kind of unfathomable in a way because it's not what we see on TV or social media. I wrote a federal law with Republican former Congressman Bob Dole to kickstart public health programs across the country that are still active today. And the truth is we're not going to create cultural change if we sit on opposite sides of the court and complain about each other in our little echo chambers. I want to create spaces on all of these issues where we can learn how to connect again because we deserve it. We have to challenge ourselves to reimagine how politics works if things are going to get better. And I think we can do that on all of these issues.
Thank you. Nabeela, on which of your priorities would you be willing to make compromises in order to find common ground and gain support for bipartisan legislation?
Yeah, truthfully, I don't know if I could say that on all the issues I would be willing to work across the aisle. I think very recently, the leaked draft opinion for the Supreme Court, which would repeal Roe v. Wade and remove the right for people to seek access to safe and legal abortions, was extremely horrifying for many people, for me, for people in the community. And as someone who worked to elect pro-choice Democratic women, there is a lot I'm willing to work with people on, talk through, but there are some values that I will never, ever compromise. And the right to safe and legal abortions in our state and across our country is something I will fight day in and day out for. And, somewhere where I do think I could definitely compromise on is and work across the aisle to do, because this is a big priority of mine that I want to accomplish, is redistricting reform. I believe that the way that we're currently drawing our maps in a very partisan manner is not favorable for anyone. I think we need to form an independent citizen commission, but the real question becomes, who appoints this commission? Who selects the members of this commission to redraw the district lines? And, if it's a political figure, then the independence of the commission is entirely lost. And I've stated all throughout my campaign that redistricting reform is crucial to making sure that adequate representation of our communities occurs. I would express concern that communities should be kept together and not split in half or divided between streets, because it dilutes the ability for specific communities to advocate effectively on their own behalf. We should all want good, honest, and fair government, fair democracies, regardless of our political party. And that is somewhere where I believe that we could work across the aisle, work with the opposing side to make sure we make significant progress on this.
I just want to use my rebut, if that's okay. Thanks. I know I have two. I'm just going to use one of them. I just want to say that, you know, a lot of Republicans in this community and across the state also believe in abortion rights. And so I think, and other issues around voting access and safety and drug policy reform and a lot of things. So, I mean, I don't think we want to pigeonhole ourselves into just thinking that all Republicans agree with one thing and all Democrats agree with another thing. I think that's kind of ruined our ability to actually make progress.
I would also like to use my rebuttal if I could really quickly. How many minutes do I have for that? Is it 1 minute?
1 minute.
Thank you. So the work
30 seconds for a rebuttal. I'm sorry, Nabeela, only 30 seconds.
The work I do day in and day out is related to voting rights. And I agree, we can't pigeonhole any group, any demographic into believing one way or another. But it is true that Republicans are on the forefront. They have introduced 440 bills in 2021 alone to attack voting rights. They've been attacking reproductive rights, preparing for this moment. And I'm incredibly proud to be the only candidate in this race who has never donated money, publicly supported, or made any campaign videos for anti-choice candidates, because it's a value that I hold very near and dear. And right now, it doesn't feel like politicians on the opposing side are supporting us. So I look forward to having those conversations and working towards that bipartisanship to see eye to eye, but I will not compromise on safe and legal abortions. Thank you.
Thank you both. The time now requires us to move into the closing statements. Candidates, you would each have 2 minutes, and we will begin with Nabeela.
Thank you. 2 minutes. Thank you so much. I just want to start off by saying I am the daughter of immigrants from India. I'm a proud Muslim woman. If there is one thing that the Democratic Party, that this country has taught me, it is that our diversity and our inclusivity makes us strong and uniquely qualified to confront the challenges presented before us. You know, my parents never believed that when they first arrived to this country, that their daughter, decades later, would be running to participate in state government. But here I am as a candidate, as your candidate for state representative. I'm running because just saying no and sending out press releases, attacking the achievements in the state is not governing, nor is it truly representative of the people of the 51st State House District. And that's what our current state representative is doing. When constituents ask for relief from inflation, relief from property taxes, a state budget is presented doing just those very things, and our representative says no. This isn't governing or solving problems. We need to be putting forth the strongest candidate up against Chris Boss in the general election. As of the last public filing, our campaign has raised over $215,000 from over 700 community members. We're a grassroots movement here in the Northwest suburbs. We have well over 3 times the amount of resources and money on hand than both our primary and general opponents combined, and we will be investing this money to engage and mobilize voters so we can go head to head and beat Chris Boss in this general election. Look, what's clear is that we need to have a fundamental conversation about the work our legislators do on our behalf in Springfield. I will fight for more common sense gun reform. I will fight to keep our districts safe, to maintain and improve our high quality public education. I will fight to protect voting and reproductive rights. I've been advocating for these very values my entire life, and I humbly ask for your support to continue my fight in the state legislature. Thank you so much.
Thank you, candidates. You have both heard from Nabeela Syed and Chelsea Laliberte-Barnes.
I think Chelsea needs to give her closing statement. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thought I had.
Okay.
Please forgive me.
Sure. No, it's okay. It's been a pleasure to spend the last hour with all of you. Thank you for having me. Before I close, I just wanted to mention that several candidates in the Lake County Democratic Women are hosting a rally for reproductive rights on Saturday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. at Paulus Park in Lake Zurich. So please join us for that. Once again, my name is Chelsea Laliberte-Barnes, and I am running for state representative in District 51. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My website is chelseaforillinois.com. You can email me at chelseaforstaterep@gmail.com or call 224-836-1231. We are a grassroots campaign led by women and are always looking for volunteers. And hey, I'm always up for getting a cup of coffee with you to talk about what's on your mind. If you are looking for a thought leader who is also an experienced and pragmatic problem solver, that's who I am. The political power plays, corruption, bullying, intimidation, and lying do not interest me. When I decided to run, many elected officials told me that this would hurt and it's going to be grueling, but it's been enlightening and inspiring. And it's why I spend most of my time talking to all of you, because you make me feel motivated every day. And I hope our conversations are causing you to feel hopeful as well. I am authentic, I'm strategic, I'm not afraid to take risks, and I know who I am. I want to be myself. I want to say when I don't know the answer to something, bring people together who usually wouldn't come together, have uncomfortable conversations, and listen to you more than I speak. I believe I am the best candidate for this district because I listen, because I work across the aisle, because I'm focused on solutions, and because I have a proven track record of creating positive changes in our community. And I would be honored to earn your vote and serve you as our state representative. Thank you.
Thanks to both candidates, Nabeela Syed and Chelsea Laliberte-Barnes. Best of luck to both of you. We will turn this part of the program over to Kathy now.
As we bring this forum to a close, I want to thank the candidates for their participation. I'd also like to thank the volunteers for the time that they put in to bring this to all of you. I want to stress that voting day is June 28th, and that there is a lot of information that can be found on the League of Women Voters Palatine area site, the League of Women Voters Illinois, and the Illinois Voters Guide, which is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Illinois. I hope you'll go out there and access all of the information available to you. Don't forget that early voting begins, I believe, June 13th, and that in addition to your attending this, which we also want to share our appreciation for, we want to make sure that you participate in our democracy by making sure you're registered and casting your ballot. So don't forget, your vote is your voice. Thanks again for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us and organizing this.
Have a great night.
It was my pleasure being your moderator on behalf of Delta Sigma Theta, Sorority Incorporated.